Welcome to Musings from Arledge, solo edition. So with Mike Bohn's resignation or termination or whatever it was, USC fans are now in a position that they don't really want to be in. Because you see, we had thought that we won the debate. For years, it wasn't clear that USC actually valued having an elite college football program. And it appeared, in fact, that USC didn't care about that at all. And there's certainly powers at USC who don't. So a lot of us thought that the days of trying to compete with the Ohio States and the Alabamas of the world were a discarded relic of the past that was in the history books and it wasn't going to happen again. When Mike Bohn and Carol Folt opened the checkbook and hired Lincoln Riley, that was a definitive answer that USC was, in fact, going to try to win in football and win big. So now with Mike Bohn's dismissal, we're left to see whether or not the forces who want to compete with the elite in college football are still in control. And we don't know the answer to that yet. I suspect we'll still win this one, but it's not as clear as it was a month ago or 2 months ago when it looked like USC was on that path. Understand, not everybody wants USC to compete at the highest level in football. I don't have to tell you that football is a wildly popular spectator sport. That's obvious. The NFL is the biggest professional sport in the country. College football can make a pretty strong claim to be the second. And that's even before the college football playoff, which I think will make college football explode even more in popularity. But there are a lot of people that question whether football should be popular. At many universities, USC included, there are significant groups of faculty and administrators that question whether competing at the highest level of athletics is even consistent with the university's mission. And obviously, as evidence of serious long-term damage from brain injuries continues to come in, a lot of people question whether football is appropriate at all. There are very well-known and persuasive people who argue that cheering for football these days is like being an ancient Roman cheering from the seats of the Colosseum as gladiators kill each other. And we know that increasing number of parents keep their kids out of the sport. There are serious objections here on all of this, especially on the head injury issue. We need to continue to research CTE. We need to continue to look at equipment and rule changes to make the game safer. I can't settle any of that here. I will say, I think it's a danger to extrapolate findings about NFL players and then treat that as what football means at all levels. All football is not created equal. What happens in both youth and high school football is not equivalent to what happens in the NFL any more than joining a boxing class at the local gym and sparring with an accountant who lives down the street is similar to facing Mike Tyson in a boxing ring. It's not necessarily the same thing, which is not to say that the sport isn't dangerous for younger people or at the lower levels. It's just to say that there's still a lot we need to learn. So the question for a lot of people is whether football should be saved. I can't answer all of those difficult questions now, but I want to make sure that I put out there what I think is on the other side of the ledger, because I think there's a lot of reasons why football is extraordinarily valuable. So today I'm going to make a full-throated defense of football, not for how fun and entertaining it is for spectators. That doesn't require an explanation. We know that. I'm not going to argue that it's fun for participants. It is, but that doesn't necessarily make it valuable. There are lots of things that are fun and may be terrible for us. I'm going to defend football as having value, apart from just being fun. I think that football is an amazing teaching tool, one of life's great experiences and character-building enterprises. And I think football offers something to youth and to college students that many of them will have a hard time finding anywhere else. It can even help with some of the things that we hate most about modern life. Now, in the process, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my own experiences. That is, in fact, why I'm wearing my William Jewell College football shirt today. I hope you'll forgive me for talking about my own experiences. I'm not doing it because there's something extraordinary about my career. Quite the opposite. I'm using my career because I can assure you there was absolutely nothing extraordinary about it at all. It's easy to see how Caleb Williams benefits from football. It's harder to see how football benefits ordinary people, far smaller and less talented than Caleb Williams or Tom Brady, people who never make a dime from football. But I think it does. For many people, football may be the best teacher of critical life lessons, including hard work, how to work with and even love people who are very different from you, delayed gratification, and even important lessons about how to take advantage of limited opportunities in life. I'll start a little bit with hard work. I read a commentator once argue that the movie Karate Kid ruined the world because it led a whole generation of kids to believe that you could master something difficult, in that case, a martial art, with just a couple of months of effort. Now, certainly the movie's unrealistic. You can't master a martial art in a couple of months. But it's not the Karate Kid that's threatened to ruin the generation of kids. It's social media, TikTok and Instagram. It's kids seeing ditzy, silly girls making hundreds of thousands of dollars because they dance around in a bikini. It's seeing this very unrealistic portrayal of people living the high life, flashy, fun-filled lives, lives of the type that very few people ever acquire. Maybe they shouldn't. And certainly the sort of lives that you're not going to acquire for the most part unless you work really hard for a very long time. My grandfather grew up on a farm in southern Oklahoma, just a few miles from the Red River. He didn't grow up with any unrealistic expectations about the necessity of hard work or delayed gratification. He worked his butt off doing demanding, difficult labor all the time. And he learned that success, or in the case of poor farmers in those days, not just success, survival, is about hard work. It's about doing things today that you don't necessarily want to do, that won't pay off for many months, if ever. Through the generations, as Americans have become richer, and we have, the standard of living now is higher than it's just about ever been in any other time in human history. It's become easier for us to miss the lessons that my grandfather and probably your grandfather learned just naturally by the nature of existence. That success is hard, that it's earned through sweat and discipline, and that it takes years of struggle, oftentimes struggle that won't pay off until some distant point in the future. People who learn those lessons have a huge leg up in this world, where those lessons are even harder to come by. Now, I did not grow up on the farm. I grew up in a middle-class family in middle-class neighborhoods in the suburbs. We weren't wealthy, but we also didn't go hungry, and I never had to worry that we would. And most of what I dealt with was relatively easy for me. School was easy for me. I didn't face a lot of struggle. But football was hard. If I wanted to have any chance to play football with my lack of natural talent, I was going to have to really work at it. And I so badly wanted to succeed at football. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved it like almost nothing else. The rush of scoring a touchdown, of making a big hit, the rush of the pain, the violence. The thing is, football hurts. The bruises, the sore muscles, the sore neck, taking a helmet to the elbow, getting smashed under a pile, wind sprints in hot, heavy gear in 100-degree heat, waking up during two-a-days and sitting in the wet, dew-covered field as you try to stretch out a body that is trying to become acclimated to all the running and cutting and hitting, a body that just wants ibuprofen and a bed. Football hurts. And if you're dedicated, if football really matters to you, the work is year-round. Doesn't really matter the circumstances. I certainly remember the summer sprinting and lifting sessions with my teammates where you're trying to force yourself to run one more sprint in the blistering heat when really you'd prefer just to be about anywhere else in the world. Sometimes I was anywhere else in the world. I remember my junior year in college when I was doing an overseas study course that allowed me to travel, take a train all around Europe. And I remember having to figure out wherever I was, how can I find weights or weight substitutes at Oxford, England, or where can I find stairs to run up in Rome, or an empty strip of sand to run onto the beach in Barcelona, anywhere I could prepare, because I didn't want to take the time off. I wanted to win. I wanted to be good. I wanted to be elected a team captain by my teammates. These were things that mattered very dearly to me. Now, I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. It was a great time. What I am saying, though, is that that sort of hard work is necessary if you want to be good at football, and certainly if you don't have much talent. And we weren't playing for NIL dollars. We weren't playing for fame. I wish we were. We barely made any scholarship money, and almost nobody wanted to watch us play, probably because we weren't very good. We were just preparing for the game, preparing for our teammates, preparing for ourselves. We were preparing with hard work all the time, hoping we could have some success on the field. Some of the time, we didn't know if we were going to play. Certainly in my early days of high school and college, I didn't know how much I was going to play. And even later, when I knew I was going to be a starter, I didn't know whether that hard work was going to pay off. That's the thing about preparing for football, is you really don't know whether all that hard work is going to pay off or not. Sometimes it did. I played on some good teams. My senior year in high school, we won the league. We went into the a couple rounds into the CIF playoffs. We had some enormous upsets along the way. Take that, Norco. Those were great memories. Also played on some terrible teams. We went 1-9 my senior year in college. We were terrible. We couldn't move the ball. We couldn't score. We couldn't stop anybody from scoring. It was terrible. And every week became more of a challenge. Every week the temptation grew to slack off and to quit working so hard, to just go through the motions, just wait until the season ends. Strangely enough, those are also great memories now. But that's the thing about the hard work that football requires. It's not just about delayed gratification, although that's important and a great lesson for people to learn. It's sometimes a possibility that you'll work really hard and there will be no gratification at all. You just don't know what all that hard work is going to generate. My senior year in college, I got hurt at the end of a blowout game. Our starters probably shouldn't have been in at that point, but we were. There was a pass in the end zone. I collided with one of my closest friends, our free safety. His shoulder pads collided with my knee. His shoulder pads won. My MCL lost. I ended up having to sit out for a month. It's a lot of time in a football season when it's your last year of playing. And when I came back, my already questionable speed and agility was greatly compromised. All of the hard work that I put in before that season, and it was a lot, didn't really pan out in any way at all. I missed a bunch of games. I was limited when I came back. My team was awful. But I learned some important lessons that year. Lessons about hard work, about delayed gratification. Maybe most importantly, lessons about how to deal with disappointment. We sometimes, as major college football fans, we talk about these big-time USC recruits that don't pan out the way they were expected to, the way they wanted to, as if it's some sort of tragedy. And it's probably not great for the team's one-loss record. It's probably not great for those players' dreams of NFL riches. But it's not a tragedy. Don't be so sure about that. Football is only for a short time. Learning to live with and overcome bitter disappointment, that's a valuable life lesson that'll pay dividends forever. Now, football is not the only way to learn these lessons, but there is something special about football because of its physical demands. Football hurts in a way that basketball and baseball, other sports that I played, do not. I'm not denigrating those sports. They're great sports. They take a lot of work, and they take courage. It takes courage to take a charge. It takes courage to face down a fastball when somebody's really bringing it. But football's different. Choosing to crash at full speed into a guy twice your size, a guy who would go on to play at Notre Dame and for the Chicago Bears, as I did every day in practice when I was a sophomore in high school, that was different. It hurt crashing into that guy. And it was a battle that I knew I couldn't win. I would never win it. Not one time was I going to win that battle, and I knew it. Not one time was I going to tie in that battle. My choices were either to try as hard as I could over and over again and take the pain and the failure, or quit. Those are the choices. That's a special kind of learning opportunity. And it pays off in many respects. I remember my main professor in college, he had never been an athlete, but he told me once that he came to admire the football players in his classes because they were never afraid to take on a major challenge. The truth is, those major challenges don't seem as big when you're dealing with the sorts of things that we sometimes had to deal with on the football field. Now, there are other sports that challenge you this same way, demand that you put in effort, that you deal with the pain, that you show courage. Wrestling, for example, is brutal. Nobody is mentally and physically tougher than a dedicated wrestler. Nobody. But still, football has some benefits that wrestling does not, because football is a true team sport. You don't just practice with other guys and then compete as an individual. You play with a whole bunch of other guys and you have to rely on them. You can't win a football game by yourself. You can't block an entire defense by yourself. You can't cover all of the eligible receivers by yourself. You have to rely on your teammates. I had a teammate in college. He was our strong safety. He was an unbelievable athlete. Really should have been playing at the D1 level. Probably would have been, frankly, if he had better preparation habits. There were times in games where he would look back at me and he would say, "Cover me, I'm biting." Now, for those of you who don't know what he meant, he was telling me that he was going to play recklessly aggressive. He was going to attack the offense, even if he wasn't completely sure what they were doing. He wasn't going to pay attention to his keys. He was just going to go for it. And in the process, he might fail to cover his man. He was telling me that I needed to be ready to cover both my man and his. Now, this was always unwelcome news for me. I had a hard enough time covering my own guy. I certainly wasn't in a position where I can cover both mine and his. Now, fortunately, Mike was a great athlete, incredible athlete, and an instinctive player. And oftentimes his over-aggressiveness would pay off. Sometimes, in spectacular fashion, it wouldn't. But either way, we were in that mess together. We had to rely on each other. We had no choice. That kind of teamwork is an important life lesson. But there's something special about the teamwork I learned in high school and college. You see, my teammate, our strong safety, Mike, he was from East St. Louis, grew up in an absolutely appalling neighborhood. Mike and I grew up in very different places with very different lives, and it showed in many respects. Mike had little or no tolerance for social graces or for the standard courtesy that we just grew up with in the suburbs. Mike in his neighborhood didn't care much for that. The first time that I was introduced to Mike, he briefly looked at me, turned away, and walked. Didn't even recognize my existence. It took a year before he was willing to recognize that I actually inhabit the same earth that he does at the same time. It was another year after that before he would actually greet me when he saw me, most commonly by flipping me off as we passed each other on campus. In Mike world, flipping somebody off when they walk by you is the highest level of recognition, maybe the equivalent of a bear hug and a kiss. My teammates in high school were diverse. We had guys from lily white suburbs. We had guys from Mexico, white, black, Latino, rich, poor, a whole bunch in the middle. My teammates in college were even more so. I was from California. We had guys from Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, other big towns. We had guys from one stoplight towns in Kansas and Colorado, places I'd never even heard of. We had guys who planned to be doctors. We had guys I'm not sure who had ever been to a doctor. We had guys who grew up in the hood. We had guys who grew up in the country doing crazy things like noodling, which I found out, much to my horror and fascination, is a very strange way of catching catfish with your own arm. In a day when far too many Americans are encouraged to and content with associating only with people who are like them, people who are socioeconomically like them, people who look like them, people who have the same education, do the same work as them. That's not how it worked for us. Football didn't give us that option. We were very different, and we weren't just thrown together in a room. We were required to work together, to prepare together, to rely on each other, share the same rooms on the road, and in many cases, to come to love each other like brothers, despite the fact that we were very, very different people from very different places. That was a valuable life experience and lesson. I wouldn't have gotten that but for football. And finally, football teaches just how short life is and just how few opportunities we have. Football teams don't play many games, and it's a sport that the vast majority of us can only play for a few years. If you play basketball in high school and college, you can play basketball for many, many years after that. Everybody can play basketball. There are leagues all over the place. It's not true about football. My senior year of college, our very last game, senior day, we were playing against a much better program, Evangel College. We were huge underdogs. I mean, we would have been huge underdogs if Vegas had a line on our small college games. They didn't. But we were huge underdogs. And I wanted nothing in life more than to play well and beat those guys. And I remember before the game, I was so fired up. It was a mental state where I could have run through a brick wall. And in that mental state, I got a couple of nice hits. And I also played recklessly and poorly. I was so fired up, I made bad decision after bad decision. I tried to jump an out route, failed, big play. I bid on a play action pass because of looking in the backfield. I let my receiver get behind me. I gave up 2 touchdowns that day. I'd only given up 1 other touchdown the entire year before that. I gave up 14 points. We lost by 10. When we got back to the locker room, I wept uncontrollably. Couldn't stop. I wept because I thought I let my teammates down, my brothers. Most of all, I wept because I knew I would never again play a game of football. Kids who love the piano can play piano all their lives. Kids who love to write or fish, they can write or fish all their lives. But for us, kids who love playing football more than anything, we were done at 21, 22. They took our helmets away and sent us home. Also a good lesson. You have only so many opportunities in life. It's good to learn that lesson early. You have only so many chances to see your daughters play or to teach your son that important life lesson, to nail that job interview. Only so many chances in my world to give that powerful closing argument. For the most part, there are no mulligans. And it's not enough to want to be good. It's not even enough to work hard to be good. Success takes those things, but it sometimes takes more than just those things. A lesson I learned the hard way on that field in Liberty, Missouri in November of 1994. It's one I haven't forgotten. I make no apologies for my love of football. I make no apologies for defending football as one of the great teaching tools available to young men in this country. I had great parents. They taught me a lot. I had some very good teachers in high school. I had some great professors in college. They taught me a lot. But there are many lessons I would not have learned but from football. Football is not just a popular spectator sport. It's not just something that's fun. It's also not something that's potentially very dangerous. It is all of those things. It is also one of the very best teachers I ever had. It helped to make me who I am today. I hope we find a way to fix what is wrong with the game. I hope we find a way to make it safer. I hope we find a way to keep football alive. I hope that the people who don't see the value in football, whether they're professors or administrators or others, people who think that the game is barbaric and needs to go away, people who think that it's against a university's mission to actually be committed to trying to win and succeed at something as silly as a game with a ball. Just keep in mind this other side of the ledger and how much value there is in what looks like it's just a silly sport. All right, that's it for today. I think I'm going to have a really good interview for you next week. It's not locked up yet, but I think it's going to happen. So in the meantime, have a good day. Fight on.